How you doing? This is week four's discussion post, and I'm going to be talking about Jacquees Roseau. He was born in Geneva on June 28th of 1712. He was brought up by his father since his mother passed away when he was younger. He then left at the age of 16 to France from Switzerland. I found it interesting, being so that it was after the times of John Calvin that translated himself from France to Switzerland in the 1500s. The 1700s were the times of Protestant reformism. It was there in France he met with his benefactress, the Baroness de Warens, whom educated him and turned him into a philosopher. He met Denis Diderot and both formed the core of the intellectual group, the Philosophers. He then published work that focused on the man through the means of society and civilization. Rousseau also published works that claimed the original man, while solitary, was happy, good, and free. Within the two publications, a discourse on the sciences and the arts of the social contract theory. A quote from Emile that stood out was, "I would rather be a man of paradoxes than a man of prejudice." And it's interesting. He rather sounds self-contradictory, not much different from when he said, "The first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground, bethought himself of saying, 'This is mine,' and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of society." From how many crimes, wars, and murders, from how many misfortunes might not anyone have saved mankind by pulling up the stakes of filling up the ditch and crying to his fellows, "To this impostor, you are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all, and the earth itself is of nobody." And it's interesting because it was a paradox between liberty and human oppression. But now, going off the fact that in the social contract, there were three main points that revolved around the state of nature, where man is free and independent, around society in which man is oppressed and dependent on others, and the state under social contract, in which, ironically, man becomes free through obligation. He is only independent through dependence on law. And it's interesting because what impact does that have on education and the legacy and longevity of a civilization? And going back to understanding that, well, man is only independent through dependence on law. Well, understanding what education is and how education contributes to law and common law, whereas we can all live on the same earth and there will be less wars and crimes for murders, is very much interesting. Jacquees Roseau claimed in his published works a discourse on the science of the arts. When in solitary, man is happy, good, and free because of individual freedom of thought. The power of the mind and to think and believe one is free and is impacted by education has been the epitome of mankind being destroyed nowadays. You can believe that you're free, but if you're not cognitively, consciously free, then are you really free? In order for education to have a long-lasting longevity and legacy on civilization itself, philosophy needs to be studied. Not even that. Jacquees Rousseau was someone that proved that although there were three different published works, a discourse on the science of the arts, the social contract theory, and the other one I'm not remembering right now off the top of my head, but they contrast because man is corrupt through the means of society and civilization, whereas man is alone and in solitary, they're happy, good, and free. So in reality, where is it that the law has corrupted man, where when man is alone, they're happy, good, and free? Meanwhile, a lot of individuals that believe in individual freedom believe that, yes, law can corrupt individuals, but when there is a common ground, the best thing to do is believe and think that you are free. Society needs education in order to focus and encompass towards a better future. Society and mankind's civilization has been corrupted, perhaps because of miseducation or being educated in the wrong means. Just how a discourse on the sciences of the arts by Jacquees Rousseau was published has, when the social contract theory was published, man could have been described as corrupt with others, non-corrupt when they're by themselves. It's like those type of individuals that you see them doing certain things when they're with other individuals, like peer pressure, but when they're alone, they're not capable of doing any of that. A lot of individuals alone, they stay out of trouble, but when they're with others, they seem to get in trouble. And it's pretty interesting because that definitely changed my philosophical thinking about ethics and logistics of ensuring education for all. Every generation has been different in the intake process of education and how to fulfill their purpose. That is where the argument can be finally taken, where the purpose of education can be disputed. Education can be different to everybody based off of their personal gain, their personal strength, and the sense of a working society, group of civilians that are working for a better future outcome in life. And that's what it comes down to, because it's understood that in a social contract theory, there were three main points that revolved around the state of nature, where man is free and independent around society, in which man is oppressed and dependent on others, and the state understood that, well, was there necessarily a state? Because during these tumultuous times, the Protestant Reform time, from the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, so on and so forth, that is what was being argued. And through moral obligation, a lot of individuals, they found themselves being miseducated. Last week, we studied on how Charlemagne was someone that knew how to work with society, but he didn't necessarily know how to read and write. That doesn't mean he wasn't necessarily educated. The same way someone knows how to read and write, and they're not educated. He is only independent through dependence on law. So if education is not being taken serious, there's not going to be a common law where society and civilization can definitely move on and move forward after any type of turmoil. Thank you very much.